Bone broth, vegetable broth. What's the difference? Find out on this next episode of Digest This.
Welcome to Digest This, the show that helps you revolutionize your digestive health. Here are your hosts, Dr. Liz Cruz and Tina Nunziato.
Hello and welcome to Digest This. I'm Dr. Liz Cruz and I've got Tina Nunziato sitting right by my side. If you're watching us on YouTube, hello. And if you're not and you're just listening to us, that's awesome. We're so excited that you have joined us for today's episode. So this is actually a great topic because so many patients ask about this. I mean, through the years, I've had patients ask. I'm sure, Tina, you have a lot of patients ask you also because you're counseling them on nutrition. And so it is a big topic. People are always curious. And
we went to that big trade show recently, and bone broth was like all the rage.
It was right? A big one.
And so it kind of led Dr. Cruz and I into like being like, okay, what is the deal with bone broth? Because we typically, in general, as a family, try to not eat as much animal products or byproducts, right? We're trying to eat less animal stuff as possible. So most of the time when I'm cooking, if I'm like, we don't fry anymore, we steam in vegetable broth. So for like a perfect example, if I'm making stir fry, instead of putting oil in the pan, I'll put vegetable broth in the pan. You kind of do a light steam on everything. And then you can put the oil later after it's cooked. But like I've always used vegetable broth for that. Making our soups, I always use vegetable broth for that, right? We haven't used bone broth. But we wanted to talk about, just the difference in the two based on what you might be looking for in your diet and what you could find in both, depending on what you need.
Right, exactly.
So,
I was just caught up in thinking about some food that.
What were you thinking about?
Because I started thinking about how bone broth is made.
Oh yeah.
And it led me into this. I don't want to say a rabbit hole because it was not a rabbit hole. It was actually really great. Thinking about the beef bones, and then I started thinking about prime rib, and then I was like, oh my goodness,
rib. Yummy.
Yeah, for someone who tries not to eat meat.
We do crave beef.
Yeah.
On occasion.
Yes,
I'll tell you, when we do crave it, we eat it.
Yes.
Because that's just telling us our body needs it. But for the most part, we've tried to limit the amount of animal products we put in our body. So let's talk about the difference between vegetable broth
I'll stop daydreaming about prime rib. Bone broth. Yeah. So what is the difference? Okay. So the difference. And I always like to start out these because my lovely wife always has a lot of more details that she'll add to make it even better, much better. But vegetable broth basically is, water where you've got herbs and vegetables and spices that have been simmering. Okay. It's a very soothing type of liquid, kind of like a soup, but it's just a broth. Okay. So, there are a ton of vitamins, all right, good nourishment in there. And then let me just jump to bone broth. Whereas bone broth is literally liquid that's been simmering with bone, like, beef, chicken, even fish bone. And so it's been simmering. And so imagine the things that are leaching out of those bones. And now I'll let my wife take it from here.
No, vegetable broth, you could make all these things at home
Absolutely.
yourself.
Absolutely.
But most people buy them, right? They're going to the store, they're buying a vegetable broth.
Could you use pig bone? Like a pork?
Heard that before. I've
it's usually
heard of lamb.
beef.
Yeah,
lamb, okay.
It's typically beef, chicken, fish, lamb bones.
So no pigs.
I haven't heard that pig bones are put in broth.
Okay. Well, that's good. That makes
that makes you feel better.
That makes you feel better. Even though there have been Easters where we've had ham because we know that we have guests coming over that eat ham.
Yeah.
And then is it the bone, the hock or the something of the ham where I always know your dad always said, oh, I'll take that and make some soup.
Yeah, he makes lentil soup.
Oh, okay.
Lentil with
Okay.
soup.
So he's not
with
like
that bone.
boiling it to like create a broth.
No,
or
he kind of
anything.
is.
Oh,
actually,
so then I guess you could.
You could. I just don't know if like I haven't
the same
heard
nutrients.
if it's the same nutrients that are in like a typical bone broth.
Okay.
But yeah, that just gives the flavor, right?
Right,
So
right.
and so there is definitely a different flavor between vegetable broth and bone broth.
Yes.
And the bone broth tends to be a little bit more hearty, a little bit more rich. The vegetable broth a little bit lighter. Typically, vegetable broth is made from boiling vegetables such as onions, garlic, celery, carrots, those types of things. You know, that's like at least when I make a soup, that's like the basic vegetables that I use. And then of course I'm always adding some type of leafy green, right, to that soup. So that's how they make vegetable broth, is just from these vegetables that they boil. And it has a ton of vitamins and minerals in it. It's very easy on the gut, which is one of the reasons why we tell people to do soups a lot when they're trying to detox or they want to lose weight, to do more liquid foods, soups being one of them, because they're so high in nutrients, but they're easy on the body. And because they're water-based, both bone broth and vegetable broth, it's really good for hydration, right? So it's one of the best ways to detox the body. But the main difference is, like, think of vegetable broth as like higher in vitamins, whereas bone broth is higher in protein because the protein is being pulled from the bones.
Right.
And then it's good for gut health too, bone broth, because of the gelatin in bone broth from it literally pulling from the bones. It's good for like to keep the gut kind of slimy.
Yeah.
That's what the gut wants.
Keep it a little healthier. And you know, I thought it was fascinating as we were reading up on this topic, you know, that as you're boiling or simmering, because you're simmering the bones, you know, you've got these amazing minerals like calcium, magnesium, phosphorus that are leaching out of the bone into the broth itself.
Yeah.
So you've got that high protein collagen, the collagen that's being also, you know, leached out of the bone, and
which helps build our bones.
Exactly.
And then the other thing too is it's good for the immune system. So like if you're sick, okay. So it's interesting, you know, we eat a lot of soup. We eat a lot of vegetable soups, right, with beans. But you always hear like, oh, if you're sick, I want a chicken soup. Okay, well, now you know why chicken soup, because it's the bone broth soup that's going to help build the immune system. That's going to help get you better. So if you're sick a lot, doing more bone broths, right, is better for you in that situation, giving your immune system a boost. If you want to be vegetarian, you want something on the lighter side, then vegetable broth. If you're trying to eat more protein, you're trying to build muscle, you're trying to build bone broth.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But they do taste very different.
Yes, they do.
If you do buy, so like growing up, my mom made soups typically with bouillon cubes. And I know your mom used bouillon cubes too.
Yes.
Those are really, really bad for you.
Yeah, they are.
When we read the ingredients on a bouillon cube, we were like, oh my gosh, that needs to go in the trash.
Actually, we even had it when we first got married.
Yeah, because that's how I grew up.
Yeah, we both grew up with those and we didn't know any difference.
Yeah, but if you read the ingredients on a bouillon cube, you'll be very surprised. And it's very high in salt.
Yeah.
So anyway, we started buying the boxed vegetable broth. But again, it's really important to read ingredients, even on those, because some of them have sugar in them. And that goes for both vegetable broth and bone broth. So if you're going to buy these things and you're buying them for your health and you're buying them because you're trying to be detox and be healthy, read the ingredients. Make sure it's just the bone, just the broth, just the veggies, just the broth, not a lot of sugar, not a lot of chemicals. So very, very important.
Very important. Very important.
What else do you want to say about this?
No, I'm just still, you know, thinking about that prime rib. No, I'm just kidding. I was actually just thinking about the bone broth, you know, and the vegetable broth, and, you know, and just thinking about how healthy they are. And yes, so, you know, we're coming into winter right now, and it's a little bit cooler, even though it's 80 degrees right now in Phoenix, Arizona. But still, you know, you'll have cooler temperatures during this time of the year, and there's just nothing like a nice broth or a nice soup.
One more thing.
Yes.
About carbs in
yes.
vegetable broth versus bone broth that I wanted to mention. I forgot. So even though both vegetable broth and bone broth are very low in carbs, obviously they're liquids, right? There's not a lot of carbs. Because the vegetable broth is made from vegetables, there is still carbs in vegetable broth, less carbs in bone broth. So if you're on like a keto diet or you're trying to do super low carb, probably choose bone broth versus vegetable broth.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's right. All right. So this is actually really exciting. Bone broth, vegetable broth, great broths, and
eat them together.
Eat them together. That's right. Use them for sauteing. Use them for steaming. Use them. I mean, like Tina mentioned earlier, things that we used to fry, sauteing and stuff like that. Now we use broth. So healthier and so good for you. All right. And if you want to connect with us, if you want to learn more about the broth or about anything, you can email us at support. Actually, it's support@drlizcruz.com. You can also go to our website, drlizcruz.com, and you can go on the homepage. There's a magenta color button on the homepage. You can click it and schedule a free 30-minute wellness consult. And that's free. You could do it from anywhere in the world because it's done over the phone. If you haven't subscribed to our podcast, please subscribe so that you never miss out on an episode. And lastly, if you haven't rated us, please rate us. Please give us a 5 so that other people just like you will find us. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll catch you on the next podcast.
Thank you for joining Dr. Liz Cruz and Tina Nunziato. To learn more about their revolutionary products and services, go online to www.drlizcruz.com.